Hi, friends. It's Leah Fort with your Winning Wednesday, WINSDAY, coming to you on a beautiful Wednesday afternoon. I hope everyone's having a wonderfully winning day and a fabulously winning week. And I'm getting ready to move this down just a smidge because I feel like I'm looking way up at everyone. I had to rearrange myself today because we've been doing some things in some of the other rooms in our home, and I just kind of have a mess everywhere. So today I'm kind of bunched up in this little spot uh, in my kitchen area. So anyway, I hope everyone's having a great day. It's a winning day. It's just a kind of a cluttery day at my house, and so all that to say, I hope that everyone is having a good week and that you had a wonderful Christmas and just a beautiful holiday season. And as we are finishing out this year, I cannot believe we're in the last days of the year, the last of 2023. And I've got a new motto that I'm going to be using in 2024, but I don't want to announce that quite yet. I'll probably announce that next week. But this has been a challenging year for many of us. It's been a difficult year for many of us. It's been a sad year for some of us. And, but then for others, it's been a wonderful year. It's been a year full of joy and happiness and many good things. So there have been lots of things that have happened throughout the year that have brought on many kinds of emotions, many emotions that just kind of just crop up at the circumstances that our lives bring about. And so today, what I want to do is finish up what we started last week, because we're talking about last week we talked about being ready, and we talked about the parable that Jesus gave in Matthew chapter 25 that Matthew had recorded about Jesus talking about the 10 virgins. There were 5 wise and 5 foolish virgins. And it's talking about this preparation for this wedding feast. And so we talked a little bit in depth about that last week, about how these 10 wise virgin or 5 wise virgins had come to this this time of being ready for the groom to arrive. And then the 5 foolish ones were not ready. So let's just look at our word. The word, of course, is ready or readiness, or preparedness. And so we talked about last week that it's being in a suitable state, or just being ready for activity or action or a situation that is coming. And so it's preparing yourself for that, being easily available or easily obtained, within reach. So you've got something ready to use. If you're making a recipe of something, then you're going to have all of your ingredients out so you can grab whatever you need. If it's milk or an egg or whatever, you can get it at the moment that you need it as you are putting this recipe together. If you are doing something else, if you're working on a vehicle or some other type of thing, and you have tools, then you're going to lay out the tools that you're going to need. And so that way they're within reach, they're easily obtained. So it's about being prepared for what is coming. And so it's also being prepared mentally, physically, for some experience or action. It is being fit for, trained for, seasoned for, qualified for, equipped for some experience or action or activity. And so we get ready for everything we do. And we talked about that a little bit last week. We get ready for whatever is coming our way. So we get ready for church, we get ready for work, we get ready for school, we get ready for meetings, we get ready for parties. We talked about all of those things. So we get ready for work and play and everything else. Matthew 25 verses 1 through 13 is the parable of the 10 virgins, and they had lamps. They had on their wedding attire because they were getting ready. They wanted to be ready whenever that groom arrived. They wanted to be ready for his arrival. So they had on all the attire that they needed. They had their lamps with them. They had the extra oil that they needed in case they ran out of oil that was already in their lamps as the lamps were burning. So they wanted to have everything ready. So as soon as that call came, as soon as the bridegroom and that party arrived, they were ready to go. So that's why they did this. But there were also 5 foolish virgins, and they were the ones that were not ready. All they had was the clothes that they had on and the lamps that they had in their hands. They didn't bring any extra oil. So they weren't ready for what was to come in case it took a long time. And so we talked about that last week, that whenever they looked, or whenever the bridegroom arrived, they needed to get more oil because they had run out. So their lamps were going out. So they had to run and get more oil. And so when they did, they went to get the oil. But when they got back, the door was closed because the wedding party had been complete and the bridegroom's father shut the door. So nobody else could come in to the wedding party. And so we talked about how that we can liken that to the coming of Christ. And when Jesus comes to get his bride, we need to be prepared. We need to be ready for his arrival. And so as we think about that, and we think about the end of this year and the coming of the new year, I want us to talk about preparedness in that way, because we know that the return of Jesus is imminent. We know it's going to happen. So as believers in him, we want to be ready for his return, but we need to live here as though he's not going to come back for 1,000 years, but we also need to live like he's going to come back in the next 5 seconds. So I need to always be ready for his arrival. So as I think about that, I look to this coming year of 2024, and I ask myself this question: am I preparing for the things that I know are going to come my way? And am I preparing for things that might come my way without being worrisome about it? So am I living in such a way that I'm going to be prepared for what might come my way? So when we consider such things, I just think, what am I doing? What are we doing in preparation? Am I using my time wisely? How am I going to use my time? What am I thinking about that I'm going to be doing? There are 52 chapters of this next year coming up, 365 pages that I get to write in this new book of mine, of my life. So what am I going to do with those chapters and those pages of this book? And I liken it to that because I'm a writer, so it's easy for me to think maybe you do other things, and so it's easier for you to think of it in other terms. But I look at it like a book. There are 52 chapters, 365 pages. How am I going to write it? What am I going to write on those pages every day? How am I going to write those chapters every week? So as I think about this, how am I preparing for this year? And you've probably heard me talk about this before, about goals and resolutions. And a lot of people go, I don't make resolutions, blah, blah, blah. But the truth is, goals and resolutions are not the same thing. And so I'm going to talk about this again because I talk about it every year, because I think it's important for us to think about them, because they're two different kinds of things. So goals and resolutions, I am resolved not to be anxious about things. I'm resolved to trust God in all things that I need. So if I'm thinking about being resolved in something, I'm making a resolution. That means I am doing something within myself. This is about my person, the essence of who I am and how I'm going to approach things. My resolve is, I always think about the song, the old hymn that says, I am resolved no longer to linger, charmed by the world's delights. Things that are higher, things that are nobler, these have allured my sights. And so I will hasten to him, hasten so glad and free. Jesus, greatest, highest, I will come to thee. So it's saying I am resolved to live my life by the word of God, not by the things of the world. So it's a resolution within my person, within myself, that I'm going to live this particular way. So that's about resolutions. That's what resolution is all about. It's I am resolved within myself to be different within my person. And so other kinds of resolutions that I thought of as I was preparing for this, I'm resolved to change my words this year, to speak grace with everything I say. Now, does that mean that everything that I talk about is going to be a positive thing and everything, no, of course not, because things happen that are not positive and we have to deal with those things and we have to talk about them. But when I talk to someone and when I share with someone, and I think about the people that are the closest to us, our spouse, our children, our parents, other family members. When I talk with these people, am I going to speak grace to them? No matter what the subject is, no matter what the situation is, are my words going to carry grace? And that's something that we can resolve within ourselves to do. We're told in the New Testament several times that the words that we share need to be encouraging and full of grace. No matter what kind of message we're having to bring, our words need to be seasoned with grace, so that when we say them, they're received in the way that they need to be received. And so that's something that I can resolve to do. Is everything? I'm sorry. I am resolved to keep my anger in check and not to be sinful when I become angry. That's something that we can resolve within ourselves, because it's something that it's a spiritual resolution. I'm not going to let my anger get the best of me. If you have a tendency, I'm not that person, but I don't have a tendency to get angry about things like that. But I know people that's the way they kind of just fly off the handle at any given thing. And so maybe their resolution needs to be, I'm not going to get angry. I choose not to be this person. I'm not going to allow my anger to get the best of me. Or maybe there's somebody that is extremely negative and critical, and they go, you know what? I am resolved not to be a critical person. I'm not going to critique everyone and everything. Maybe that's the thing that they need to do. I wrote down this one. I am resolved to look to the Lord every day, to fill my spirit with his joy and walk in the strength of that. So maybe you just go, I just want to be full of God's joy, and I want to walk in the strength of his joy. So I'm going to live that way, because it's a fruit of the Spirit to have joy, to have peace, to have patience, to have kindness, to have goodness. All of those things are fruit of the Spirit. And so I want to be full of that. And so I'm going to resolve within myself to live that way this year. So that's what I'm talking about when I say resolutions. So when we think about goals, then goals are completely different because goals are measurable. Goals are something that are measurable, are things that are measurable. And so they require measurable steps. So you have an ultimate goal of something. And so these are the steps you're going to take to achieve that goal. And that is what the difference is between a resolution and a goal. A resolution is something that is happening within you. I resolve to be this way. A goal is when you say, I'm going to set, it's external. A goal is out here and you say, I'm going to do this thing. This is my ultimate goal. How am I going to get there? I'm going to set these steps. So I'm going to set these small goals to get to the big goal. And that's what that's about. So for instance, you might say, I'm going to read through the Bible this year. Well, how am I going to do that? I'm going to read X number of chapters every day to get through the Bible through the year. Or I'm going to read a passage from the Old, a passage from the New, a Psalm and a proverb, or whatever, something like that. I've got a reading plan that is measurable. So I can say, I have done this step to get to that goal. So that's what I'm going to do to get through reading the Bible through in a year, if that's your goal. And so maybe you're saying, I'm going to read at least 12 books this year. I'm going to read a book a month. And so that's a measurable goal. So you choose, how many hours a day am I going to read? How am I going to achieve this goal? I have a goal to write. I'm a writer. So I thought about this one. I have a goal to write 45,000 words every quarter. So I'm going to write these 45,000 words every quarter of the year so I can complete and publish at least 2 books. So I have this goal out here. I want to publish 2 books. How am I going to get that accomplished? I'm going to write at least 45,000 words every quarter. And that way I can take all of those words that I write and I'm going to complete these 2 books. And I'm going to get that done. So my steps are 15,000 words a month. That's how I'm going to get 45,000 words in the quarter. So I've got 15,000 words a month. So I'm going to go for that goal. I'm going to do the best that I can to get that accomplished. And I'm going to edit myself at the end of every month. And then I'm going to get all of these things professionally edited at the end of each book. So I've got these steps that I'm going to get these things done. Maybe my goal is to spend the first 30 minutes of every single day in prayer. Well, that's measurable. How am I going to do that? I'm going to go to bed every night an hour earlier so I can get up an hour. uh, uh, So I can get up an hour earlier. I'm going to go to bed an hour earlier so I can get up an hour earlier so I can spend those 30 minutes in prayer. I'm going to allow at least 30 minutes so that I can pray. I'm going to start my day that way every single day. That's measurable. I'm going to do that. So that's another goal. Maybe your goal is to pay off a bill. How are you going to do that? I'm going to work extra hours, or I'm going to not go out. I'm only going to go out 2 meals a week. And that way I will save the rest of the money that I would normally spend eating out. I'm going to add that to pay off that bill. I'm going to use this money that I would normally spend doing one thing, and I'm going to put it on that bill. I'm going to apply it to that, and that way I can pay off this bill. So there are different things that we can do as goals that we set, and it's measurable. And that way we can say, I can look at this. Here's my ultimate goal. Here are the steps that I'm going to take to reach that goal. So it's an external thing. That's what goals are. Resolutions are internal, goals are external. So when you think about these goals that are physical, mental, financial, family, spiritual, I'm going to work out 3 times a week. So how am I going to do that? I'm going to set the time aside and I'm going to do it. I'm going to read so many hours per day to learn new things. So I set aside that time and then I use it for that purpose. So that's how you achieve these goals. You set the goal, and then you do something that is measurable, and then you do it. That's how you achieve it. You're going to pay off a bill. You're going to add to a savings account, maybe buy a new vehicle. For your family, you're going to spend more time with your spouse or your children or your parents or whoever it is that you think, oh, I've neglected that time. I need to spend more time doing that. You set aside specific times for that purpose. So again, that's just a way of setting a goal. Now, spiritually speaking, maybe you're looking at prayer times. Maybe you're looking at Bible reading and Bible study, being more involved in the work at church. Maybe you haven't been faithful to attending church regularly. Maybe you're going, you know what? I just need to attend church regularly. So I'm going to set aside every Sunday morning, and I'm going to be there between 10 o'clock and noon every Sunday. I'm just going to set that time aside, and I'm going to call that is God's time. It doesn't belong to me. God made the Sabbath for people so that we can have rest with him. And so it is for us that God created the Sabbath. And so we need that time. And so I'm going to be faithful to attend church regularly so that I can grow spiritually. How does that help me? By attending church, because I'm gathering with people that believe the same way I do. So I'm going to gather with these people. We're going to learn from one another, and I'm going to pay attention to what they're saying. I'm going to go to Sunday school. I'm going to go to church. I'm going to do these things so that I can grow in this place. And so we have these things that we want to do. Maybe you attend church regularly, but you're not serving in a place at church regularly. Maybe you need to teach Sunday school. Maybe you need to go to Sunday school more. Maybe you want to help with children or youth or in the nursery or in another kind of ministry, in choir or worship team or something like that. Maybe you have a talent that you're not using. Maybe you're that person that can decorate. Maybe you're that person that can arrange flowers or whatever. I don't know. I'm just trying to think of things. You know, maybe you play the piano or play the organ or play another instrument, and you're going, you know what, I can use that. Maybe I can rotate with someone and use my abilities that God has given to me. And so with all of these things, there's this required personal resolve. So I'm resolved to be healthy, and that's why I'm going to work out. I'm resolved to take care of my mental capacities, and that's why I'm going to read more, and I'm going to read my Bible. And sometimes resolving to take care of your mental capacities is to resolve to not be around toxic people. Maybe you've been around some toxic people in your life and you're going, you know what? I just don't really need to spend that much time with this bad influence in my life. Maybe I need to spend more time with some different people. Hey, Delia, good to see you. Glad you're here. And so maybe these are things that we need to change. I'm resolved to take care of my financial stability as much as it is in my control. And so that's what we're doing. I'm resolved to make my family time a priority this year, that maybe I haven't done that in the past. I'm resolved to grow in my spiritual journey with the Lord. So as we resolve in ourselves, we're prepared to set goals and can keep those goals because we're resolved within ourselves to do that. And so in Matthew 25, as we talked about last week, it's talking about being ready for the coming of the bridegroom. And because we don't know when that's going to be. So as we think about this, um, we ask these questions. What am I doing that's preparing me for his arrival? What am I doing that's preparing me for Jesus appearing in the clouds? Am I going to be ready when he does that? I sure want to be. I want to make sure that I'm ready. So, am I spending my time wisely? When he returns, will he find me engaged in something that will bring glory and honor to himself? That's a really good question, because sometimes, I remember years ago hearing a story about, and it was just an example, but it always makes me kind of giggle because we've probably all been guilty of this. You're having this knockdown drag out with your family. Maybe your kids are not behaving, or your husband's not doing the right thing, or your wife's not doing the right thing, or whatever. And so you're in there and you're just letting each other have it. You're just kind of yelling at one another or whatever. And then you glance up, the doorbell rings, and you glance up and it's your pastor, and you go and all of a sudden everybody's suddenly on their best behavior because they don't want to get caught doing the wrong thing. And this is the Lord is telling us in Matthew 25, be ready. Don't be doing the wrong thing. When the Lord comes back for me, am I going to be engaged in something that I'm not going to be ashamed of? And that's what this question is asking. When he returns, will he find me engaged in something that will bring glory and honor to himself? What am I doing? What am I doing with my time? What am I doing with my days? When he returns, will he find me engaged in something that I would be ashamed for him to see me doing? Because you know what? If you are, he already sees it. So you already should be ashamed if you're doing something that you shouldn't be doing. There are some things that we go, well, the Lord understands, it's all covered under grace. But the truth is, if you already know it's wrong, don't do it. Don't do it, because you're going to be ashamed anyway. So why are you engaging in such things? So how are we using our time? And I want to read this passage out of Proverbs chapter 6, verses 6 through 11. It says, take a lesson from the ants, you lazy bones. This is the New Living Translation. It says, learn from their ways and become wise. And he's talking about ants because if you've ever watched ants, it's amazing what they're able to do. They can carry so much more than their body weight. It's amazing to watch ants as they go through, like, and obviously we like to think about picnics and that kind of stuff, but they carry off the scraps from food and they carry it to their places under the ground, and then they feed off of that stuff. And it's just amazing to see how hard they work. But here's what this proverb says: take a lesson from the ants, you lazy bones, learn from their ways and become wise. Though they have no prince or governor or ruler to make them work, they labor hard all summer, gathering food for the winter. So they're gathering all this stuff to keep it in storage for when there's not any food. So when it's time for famine, they've taken advantage of feast time and they're storing it for themselves so that when it is time of famine, they got something to eat. And so he's saying, take a lesson from them. And he goes on and he says, but you lazy bones, how long will you sleep? When will you wake up? A little extra sleep, a little more slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest. Then poverty will pounce on you like a bandit. It's going to come suddenly and you're going to go, uh-oh, I'm not ready. I'm not ready. I haven't been preparing financially for